The briefing tent at Nellis had no insulation from ego. Laughter echoed off aluminum siding, boots thudded under folding tables, and a dozen voices competed for space with their own stories. Someone cranked the volume on the display, only to be ignored as another pilot reenacted a barrel roll using 2 marker pens. Kira stood near the edge of the group, her flight suit crisp but patchless, one hand resting against the laminated chart folded under her arm. She didn't speak. She waited. Her name wasn't called until the final 2 minutes of the pre-flight walkthrough. Even then, it came clipped, half-read, tucked into the last line of the mission order. Bravo 3 Kira, first-time lead, F-16. Watch her spacing on ingress. A few heads turned briefly, then turned back. No questions were asked. No notes were taken. The mission officer droned through the strike order in practiced cadence. Time on target windows, push coordinates, abort lanes. Each detail met with nods and half-jokes from the squadron veterans. Kira followed every word, pencil moving in short, fluid bursts across her burn chart mise. She already knew the baseline numbers thrust to weight, expected headwind, total reserve, but she marked it anyway, not for reassurance, for calibration. When the floor opened to last-minute inputs, Kira cleared her throat and spoke in a steady, even tone. There's a fuel calibration bug in the D-patch for the F-16's new flow meter. If the gauge runs hot, it may show an underburn. I'd recommend cross-checking manual flow at altitude. She paused. 1 or 2 instructors glanced up, unmoved. A tech near the side table laughed under his breath and muttered something about checking by flashlight. The lead instructor, Commander Lyle, didn't even look up from his tablet. It's fine. We flew it yesterday. Just fly the profile. His tone wasn't cruel, just uninterested. Polished. Final. Dismissive. Kira didn't push it. She nodded once and returned her focus to the chart in her lap. The room moved on. Target simulations rolled across the screen. Jokes resumed. Somewhere near the center table, someone cracked open an energy drink and tapped it against another pilot's helmet. No one said her name again. When the group dispersed, Kira was one of the last to stand. Her chart stayed neatly folded, tucked inside her flight binder. She clicked her red pencil into its pocket, picked up her checklist card, and walked out past the cluster of instructors without being stopped. The board near the exit listed call signs and telemetry tags for today's sortie. Kira's was there. Bravo 3. Last on the list. No squadron patch beside it. No nickname. No notes. Outside, the sun sharpened the line between shadow and glare. Pilots in mirrored sunglasses strolled across the lot, nodding at each other, tossing gloves over shoulders, trading pre-check jokes at full volume. The air buzzed with heat and jet exhaust, the kind of air that stuck to your sleeves and made you blink faster. Kira adjusted the grip on her binder and walked toward the ready line. A young lieutenant standing beside a wheeled console caught sight of her approach. His eyebrows lifted for a fraction of a second before he glanced at his tablet. "You with the Bravo bird?" he asked, almost uncertain. "Yes," Kira replied. Her tone was polite, even slot 3. He hesitated, looked again at the manifest, then stepped aside without comment. She signed her initials and moved on. The F-16 assigned to her had already been loaded. Its paint was clean, but dulled along the engine cowl from heat exposure. The wings had been repaneled. She could see the variance in sheen. Kira walked the length of it slowly, checking the rudder trim, the alignment pins, the external cabling. She touched the gear housing lightly, almost ceremonially. She always did. Machines spoke before they failed. If you listened closely, they warned you. Behind her, laughter rose from the next prep area. 2 pilots were recounting something about a G-lock sim and an instructor passing out mid-roll. Kira kept walking. Her cockpit prep was meticulous. She ran the same checks she had practiced since training, but always in her own rhythm. Nothing rushed. Nothing skipped. Inside the panel pocket, she clipped in her laminated fuel chart. It was hand-built, not printed. drawn with burn rate tables and handwritten notations that adjusted for density, altitude, and airspeed fluctuation. She had memorized most of it. The chart wasn't for her memory. It was a confirmation ritual. Proof, in numbers, that she still belonged here. The rumor about her had taken root months earlier. Too procedural, too slow on formation breaks, always recalculating. Someone called her a checklist pilot. Another said she'd washed out of a higher profile wing because she didn't trust her gut. What they didn't know was that her gut was the checklist. It always had been. Her gloves were already on. Her helmet rested beside the stick, visor down, optics shield flickering faintly in the reflection. She took a slow breath and closed the canopy. From outside, no one noticed. A couple of techs moved past with a spare oxygen tank. One of them glanced her way, then turned to his partner. Bravo 3. That the quiet one. The partner shrugged. They said she's lead today. Probably just here to log time. Inside the sealed silence of the cockpit, Kira flicked each switch in sequence. Her voice remained steady as she checked in with ground. Her readback was precise. Her grip on the throttle was light. No one asked her a question. No one verified her readiness. They didn't need to. She was filed, approved, and airborne on schedule. She eased her helmet into place, glanced once more at the burn card clipped beside her leg, and whispered a number. Not to the system, not to the channel, just to herself. 100.0, the magic baseline. The brief had moved past her. The squadron had moved around her. The instructors would remember the call sign. Maybe. But not the chart. Not the note. Not her voice. Not yet. The flight line swarmed with energy that buzzed like a live wire. Crew chiefs called checklists over engine whines. Mechanics jogged between fuel lines with coiled cables slung over their shoulders, and a cluster of pilots stood in half-shadow laughing about call signs that weren't theirs anymore. Kira moved through all of it with the same steady cadence that had marked her entire prep eyes forward. Gloves clipped at her hip, checklist folded flat beneath one arm. She approached the manifestation and waited her turn. The tech inside the booth didn't look up right away. When he finally did, he squinted. "You part of ground or flying with a bird?" he asked, already flipping through the next page of forms. "Bravo 3, she said. "Sortie lead, F-16 tail 07. He frowned, then turned toward the screen. There was a pause as he typed. "We've got Bravo 2 and Bravo 4 logged. No slot for 3. You sure about the bird?" "I flew pre-check this morning," Kira said. "Logged telemetry at 6:37. She slid the folded page across the counter. He studied the sheet, then gave a shrug that wasn't quite an apology. "You're good. They probably just missed the upload. Mark yourself hot. You'll show up on the back-end tag when you ping altitude." He didn't smile. Kira nodded once and moved on. Her jet was waiting at Base 7. The sun had pulled long shadows across the edge of the hangar, and the forward edge of the wing caught the light in a way that made the metal glow. Her walk-around took longer than the others. She paused at each panel, brushed a gloved hand along the sensor array, checked and rechecked the pitot cover seals. She adjusted a latch without saying anything to the nearest tech, then climbed up without fanfare. Inside the cockpit, the scent of warm insulation mixed with jet fuel. The fabric along the edge of the side panel had frayed slightly from years of use, and Kira's fingers traced the same spot she always did. Her laminated chart was clipped just beneath the throttle. The checklist slid in beside it. Her pencil clicked into place. Systems check came next. Slow and deliberate. The HUD flickered once during boot sequence, then stabilized. Engine readouts were clean. She toggled fuel flow. The gauge bounced, dropped by almost half, then settled. She blinked, flipped it again. Same result. Fuel quantity 1,900 pounds. Kira paused. She ran the airspeed crossflow manually. Weight, density, altitude, air temperature. She did the math in her head. At this speed and climb rate, the tank should be reading closer to 2,800. She leaned in. The numbers were lying. The comms channel came to life with the clipped voices of lead pilots checking in. 1, cleared to roll. 2, spooling now. 4, Taxi complete. She toggled her channel and called status. Bravo. 3. Lined and locked. Fuel reading unstable. Running manual. Command came back almost instantly. Copy unstable read, divert Bravo 3, drop slot, proceed to backup runway 5 for inspection, resync telemetry on ground. The voice was firm, bureaucratic, no time wasted. Kira did not answer right away. She checked her chart again. Altitude gain rate, burn line timing, forecast crosswind. She knew the pattern cold. She'd flown it twice in sim, once again the night before. She could run this profile blind. Command, this is Bravo 3, she said. Copy the alert. Fuel system not critical. Proceeding visual to push point. There was a pause. Then the channel crackled again. Command denies that call. Confirm divert. She didn't respond. She toggled to internal, clicked her chart back into place, checked her watch. 4 seconds to taxi. No one said her name again. The jet lifted off smoother than she expected. Wind speed was stable. The climb felt right. She watched the vapor patterns around her wingtip to confirm what the instruments refused to tell her. The false reading pulsed once, then again, dropping further. She ignored it. The sky above the range was wide and hot. Ground shimmered beneath the horizon line in thin waves. The formation spread across the western edge of the zone, but they were already out of alignment. Bravo 1 overshot the arc by 100 meters. Bravo 2 was lagging. 4 was adjusting heading too early. Kira flew under them, alone, silent. Her eyes moved from ridge to valley to sky. No tech was going to tell her where to be. Her numbers were in her head. Airspeed adjusted. Angle of attack reduced. Burn range recalculated every 10 seconds. Each movement quiet, minimal, deliberate. Radio chatter picked up as the group hit the pre-strike run. Voices cracked and crossed. One of them swore, "I'm seeing climb drift," confirming nose angle. Another called, "Target slip, abort window opening." The entire formation was destabilizing. Wrong calls, overcorrects, no sync. Kira said nothing. Her finger tapped the corner of her panel in rhythm with the timing she'd rehearsed the night before. Her breathing slowed. Outside her canopy, the landscape bent into shape. The desert folded outward and upward. She banked left at just the right moment to avoid the thermal shear coming off the bluff line, then straightened into the corridor without needing to check her screen. The gauge now read critical, 1,000 pounds flat. She didn't believe it. The bird was balanced. The pitch was true. Her angle of descent on track to hit the precise window in the target corridor. She'd land with margin to spare. Bravo. 3. Confirm position. The voice again. Stiff. Puzzled. She didn't answer. Below her, the edge of the range glinted in sunlight. She adjusted throttle one last time. Fuel flow was smooth. Airspeed aligned with burn schedule. She reached down and tapped the clipped card. Final tick 100.0. No errors, no overrides, no one guiding her, and no one following. The cockpit was silent in a way that didn't feel empty. No voices filled the comms. No breathless check-ins or clipped corrections from command. Just the steady hum of systems running on quiet loops. And beneath that, the deeper rhythm of flight itself. Kira sat with both hands lightly resting near the throttle and stick. Her posture relaxed but exact. She no longer glanced at the fuel gauge. It blinked red every 7 seconds. But she had stopped counting. Outside, the terrain unfolded in long, slow ridges, sloping down toward the dry river basin that marked the entry corridor. She recognized the pattern of light on the hills. 2 crests, a shallow drop, a jagged outcrop shaped like a broken arrowhead. She didn't need her navigation panel to know she was aligned. She had memorized this run weeks ago, tracing the route over coffee at dawn, sketching it again at night on the back of old paper logs. The real landscape moved smoother than the maps ever promised. She adjusted the throttle by feel, watching how the nose line bent slightly with the change in lift. The engine responded with a low, even roar. Her gloved hand hovered near the laminated fuel card clipped to the console. Every 30 seconds. Her index finger tapped the next mark in the sequence. She did not count out loud. She had already absorbed the rhythm into her breath. 100.0. That was the baseline. Burn window 0. From there, it was altitude plus drag, minus air temp, divided by distance to flare. The numbers danced in her mind not as formulas, but as muscle memory. There was no panic in her movements, no hesitation. Each correction came clean and sure, like a musician hitting the next note before the echo faded. A thermal shimmered ahead where the ridge split. She banked left and dipped her nose 2 degrees. The F-16 slid through the hot pocket without deviation. Her HUD flickered again, false airspeed warning. She ignored it. The sky outside told the truth. Time passed differently up here, with no voice guiding her and no formation to hold. The silence became something like clarity. Every part of the aircraft responded with the grace of something trusted. The frame didn't shake. The pitch didn't drift. Even the occasional crosswind folded in around her like a shifting wave. She exhaled slowly and tapped the next mark. Another 30 seconds passed. From this point forward, the target gate was just over 4 minutes away. Her angle of descent was locked. Her margin was razor thin. No one was watching. No one was recording. But every number was still true. The debrief tent smelled like hot plastic and cold coffee. Most of the pilots sat loosely in their chairs, boots propped, flight suits half unzipped. A few held disposable cups. Others thumbed through flight logs without urgency. The screen at the front of the tent cycled through strike replays in tired silence. One miss, another wide entry, an abort call captured on audio. Most of the run footage had already been dismissed with shrugs or clipped feedback. The analyst in the corner tapped her keyboard with one hand, the other holding a pen she hadn't used in 10 minutes. She clicked to the last tagged replay on the sortie log and leaned back. The audio was quiet. No pilot comms. No callouts. Then something shifted. A clean arc appeared across the map overlay. Tight. Unbroken. Velocity steady all the way through. She frowned and leaned forward. The run had not been scheduled. That corridor had been closed. "Hey," she said, not loud, not sharp. "Who flew Bravo 3? Someone across the tent looked up, confused. 3 dropped. Fuel fault. She scrubbed back 5 seconds. The screen showed a single pass. No HUD overlay, no telemetry band, just a shadow slicing into the corridor at the exact vector drawn in the pre-brief. Flare release was dead center. Angle of escape stable. Exit velocity uncorrected. It was perfect. "There's no data tag," she said, more to herself now. The mission lead finally set down his cup and stood. "Which pilot is this?" he asked. She clicked the feed again. "It's not listed." The run came in ghosted. The room began to stir. Chairs creaked. Someone dropped a clipboard. The analyst pulled the raw trace file and opened the manual tag log. One identifier appeared, a coded ping logged 30 seconds after time on target. No call sign, just a default placeholder. "That corridor was empty," said one of the flight officers. "They were ordered to pull." The analyst said nothing. She played the run a third time. The footage showed the jet in silhouette. The wing tilt was unmistakable F-16 low configuration. No overshoot, no flare drift, no audio chatter. The mission lead leaned in. "That's not computer generated." "It's real," she said. "Manual input, no SIM record." The tech next to her murmured, "There was no Bravo 3 assigned." The room quieted. The screen froze on the moment of release. The shadow of the aircraft cast sharp against the flare burst. The system still listed it as unidentified. A blank line pulsed in red at the top corner of the frame. Someone finally asked, "Then who the hell flew that run?" No one answered. Outside, the last jets were still cooling on the tarmac, their silhouettes beginning to fade beneath the orange cast of evening light. Inside the tent, the screen remained frozen, the shape of the unknown aircraft seared into every watching eye. They had all seen it now, and none of them knew who it was. Kira brought the jet down with clean inputs, each one deliberate, smooth, and silent. The F-16 rolled to a stop on the far end of the flight line, distant from the cluster of grounded aircraft where most of the pilots had already parked. No ground crew stood waiting with chalks or signal gloves. Her bird hissed as the systems powered down, the warm metal ticking in the evening air. The engine cycled down with a low whine, and she followed her shutdown sequence without looking up. Her HUD had stopped flashing but still listed the fuel reserve at critical. She no longer needed it. She unclipped the laminated burn chart from the side console and slid it into the front panel of her flight binder. Her helmet stayed tucked under her arm as she descended from the ladder, boots touching the tarmac without ceremony. She walked with steady strides past the prep hangars, past idle generators and empty carts, past two techs checking post-flight logs who didn't glance in her direction. The sun threw long shadows across the flight line, streaking the concrete in orange and rust. Inside the debrief tent, the air was thick with heat and conversation. Pilots leaned back in folding chairs, some still wearing partial gear, others with flight suits tied at the waist. An instructor clicked through telemetry captures at the front screen. His tone clipped with boredom. Run after run showed problems. Late turns, off-center flares, corridor drift. One pilot had aborted entirely. The instructor skipped to the next track. "No point reviewing Bravo 3, he said, tapping a key without looking up. That slot dropped out on gauge fault. The analyst in the corner didn't move. She had been watching that screen for an hour, fingers still, posture too sharp to be bored. When the final replay cue began its cycle, she narrowed her eyes. One arc traced across the map in a clean, precise line. She stopped it, then scrubbed backward 5 seconds, then forward again. She leaned toward the console. "This run isn't tagged," she said quietly. The instructor barely reacted. "That's the ghost run. No ping, no telemetry. Ignore it." But she didn't. She tapped the keyboard again and enlarged the frame. The angle was exact. The flare release dropped at the center mark. No bounce, no lateral roll, no drift. The image was unmistakable. Someone had made the perfect pass. "Can someone overlay comms for this frame?" she asked, louder now. A tech near the rear console toggled the log. After a few seconds, a voice came through the speaker. "Bravo 3, lined and locked, fuel reading unstable, running manual." A moment later, the same voice, proceeding visual to push point. The room shifted. Several pilots turned toward the screen. One of them lowered his cup. A clipboard dropped and thudded quietly against the floor. Someone else whispered, "That wasn't in the log." The instructor stepped forward. "That's not Bravo 3. She dropped out. That slot was never confirmed." The analyst shook her head. Only one bird pinged manual input after cutoff. No automation. No system overlay. She opened the raw trace and pointed. "One pilot made this run. Manual. No HUD. No sync. But the path is clean." A second tech cross-referenced the call logs. It took a moment. Then he looked up. "We have voice, and the tail ping confirms flight time." The instructor narrowed his eyes. "Who flew it?" The answer came quietly from the back. "Kira." No one spoke for several seconds. The chart on screen froze on the final flare moment, the shape of the F-16 casting a long shadow over the terrain below. The telemetry display remained empty. But now, the manual ping was visible. The tent door opened just as the last confirmation blinked red on the panel. Kira stepped inside, still in full gear. Her sleeves were rolled, gloves looped through her belt, helmet tucked beneath one arm. In her opposite hand, she carried the laminated chart. No one addressed her. No one called her forward. She walked to the front of the room without breaking pace. When she reached the table, she placed the chart on the surface. Her expression didn't change. She didn't wait for acknowledgement. The chart showed a full sequence of fuel burn calculations in her own handwriting, including manual corrections for density, altitude, and unexpected climb drag. The analyst picked it up and scanned the markings. Every figure matched the flight trace. "She flew it by hand," someone said under their breath. An instructor leaned over the chart and stared at the smudged ink near the final tick mark. "Burn matches exactly. Final release at window 0. "Visual nav the whole way?" another asked. No one answered. The proof was already in the air. Kira stood back. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence was no longer part of the dismissal. It was the weight of certainty. The instructor who had dismissed her earlier now looked at the screen again, then at the chart, then at Kira. His voice came low, even, the confidence gone soft around the edges. That run was it all manual. Kira met his gaze. She didn't hesitate. Yes, by memory, line of sight, 100.0 on final. He gave a short nod, then stepped aside. No applause followed. No speeches. But the shift in the room was unmistakable. Several pilots leaned forward now. One began to replay the clip again. Slowly. The room no longer treated the footage as a curiosity. It was now evidence. Kira picked up her helmet, re-clipped the chart to her binder, and turned. No one blocked her exit. No one looked away. Outside, the wind had died. The last aircraft sat quiet in their rows. The sky was clear, pink with fading light. She walked across the flight line, still unseen in all the old ways but no longer invisible. Back in the tent, the screen reset to the traceboard. The tag no longer blinked red. The system had updated. Bravo 3 Kira. Manual. Confirmed. The briefing tent was quieter now. The commotion had ebbed into a kind of focused stillness. Most of the chairs were still filled, but no one lounged. Helmets rested on laps. Tablets sat untouched. The projection screen remained frozen on the final flare capture, Kira's run. The one no one had believed existed, until it stood unmissable in the data. One of the instructors walked to the sideboard near the exit, where sortie assignments were still written in fading marker. Most of the slots were already being erased and replaced with prep details for the following day, but he paused next to Bravo 3. For a second, his hand hovered. Then he wrote her name, Kira, in clean, deliberate strokes. No rank, no commentary, just the correction. Quiet, permanent. A few feet away, a tech leaned toward a colleague and spoke in a voice just above a whisper. She burned manual the whole way, by eye. His partner didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached for the laminated chart that had been left at the edge of the debrief table. It was still smudged from sweat and fingerprints. Every number, every interval line, every angle scribbled in red ink matched the data from the trace log. She told us the patch was off, someone murmured from behind them. Back in the brief. I remember, said another, we didn't log it. At the center table, a senior pilot picked up the chart and turned it over in his hands. He studied the penciled calculations, the crude adjustments for altitude and burn correction written in blocky handwriting. He didn't say anything, but he didn't put the chart down either. No one questioned the flight anymore. There was no more skepticism, only quiet recalibration. The data couldn't be argued. The run had been flown by feel. The corridor had been cleared with no telemetry and no visual markers beyond the terrain itself. Fuel burn had matched the profile line to the second. The flare had dropped at the 0 marker. The system had no choice but to assign her name. Somewhere on the far side of the hangar, a new tech printed a revised sortie recap. This version included Kira's flight trace. It marked her call sign in full. A small notation added below the chart listed the phrase, manual nav confirmed. No one framed it, but no one tossed it in the shred pile either. Outside, the sun had dropped lower in the sky, casting long stripes of amber light across the flight line. The tarmac radiated heat and memory, holding the day's echoes in the concrete. Kira walked across it without ceremony, binder tucked beneath one arm, helmet still in hand. Her pace was unhurried, but not slow. She didn't look back at the tent. She didn't need to. Her figure cut a sharp silhouette in the last light of day, boots marking faint prints across the sun-warmed path. Behind her, no words followed, but something else did. It was not applause. It wasn't affirmation. It was adjustment. Inside, the mission logs were being updated. Someone reopened the file from earlier that morning. A note was added beside her name fuel calibration patch flagged, time stamped with the hour she had first spoken it aloud. The instructor who had dismissed her before the flight now sat with one leg crossed, elbows on the arms of his chair. He hadn't moved in several minutes. His eyes remained fixed on the final screen capture. He finally said, "I've never seen someone fly that line blind." No one contradicted him. Another pilot stood nearby, quiet for most of the session. "She didn't fly blind," he said. "She just didn't need the instruments." At the front of the room, the analyst tapped once on the edge of the table, then turned the laminated chart toward her. She ran a fingertip across the final number on the margin, 100.0. Burn complete. Profile met. No drift. No margin error. "Maybe we should have asked what she knew," someone said from the back. No one laughed this time. Back on the tarmac, Kira reached the far edge of the hangar and turned toward the quiet service gate. Her boots scuffed against the concrete as she passed a line of idle tow carts and a few stacked chocks no one had cleaned up yet. Her shadow stretched ahead of her, long and centered. She didn't stop. Didn't wait for the moment to catch her. The moment wasn't hers to hold. It belonged to the silence that followed her. It belonged to the rows of men still inside the tent trying to understand how the pilot they'd ignored had executed the one perfect flight. She didn't need them to believe it. She had already flown it. As she passed the perimeter gate, a mechanic leaned against a supply crate with a water bottle half raised to his mouth. He watched her go and said quietly, almost as if reminding himself, "That's the one who stayed in the air." The tech beside him nodded. "She flew it manual," he said. "She flew it right." Neither of them raised their voices. Neither of them followed. But when Kira disappeared from view, the words remained behind her. Back inside, the board that listed Bravo 3 still held her name. No one had erased it. No one dared. The marker had dried into the surface, just faint enough to look permanent. The instructor from the pre-brief finally stood and turned to the team. His voice didn't rise, but every ear caught it. "Next time," he said, "we listen when she speaks." Kira was never the loudest voice in the room. She didn't chase praise or demand to be seen. She trusted what she knew, even when no one else did. Through silence, numbers, and instinct, she navigated a system that overlooked her until her precision made her undeniable. This story was never about proving others wrong. It was about staying true to yourself when the world refuses to look your way. About the quiet power of knowing your worth and never needing permission to show it. Maybe you felt that too unseen, underestimated, but steady. If Kira's journey resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories that honor the quiet strength in all of us, follow along. There are more voices like hers waiting to be heard.